Death is a second away. People die every 5 minutes from a fentanyl overdose in America. There's 200 a day. It's a plane crash every day that's happening, and we're not doing anything about it, right? And so that's why we're here. The old way is out. The game's changed. The drugs changed. Intervention has changed. And treatment's got to change. Welcome back, everybody, to the latest episode of Die Sober. Today, Zach and I are joined by our friend, our colleague, our cast member, Miss Amanda Marino, Next Level Recovery.
Awesome. I'm so happy to be here, guys. It's great to be here in Nashville with the two of you.
We've always gotten to run around in like different cities, so it's cool to actually have you here in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Yeah, and I feel like some big tourist energy somehow.
Big tourist energy with this eclipse going on. Yeah,
right?
It's serious stuff.
We've got the eclipse. I feel like there's crystals near.
I got one in my pocket, my friend.
You do?
Oh, wrong pocket. Right here. Little crystal.
There we go.
Yeah. You know how I roll.
I do know how you roll. Always prepared.
Yes.
Right? So this goes back years ago. You and I ended up on a phone call, and you actually helped me seep my way through like a mountain of paperwork.
Yes.
For no reason other than you were a good person and took the time to help me.
Well, I went through a really difficult time doing it myself. So I asked this lady from the CIP, credential every question there is. So if somebody else is struggling to get this, I'm going to help them, because it is almost like to the point where you're like, I don't want to do it.
Right.
So I helped you because I wanted to, because it was a pain in the butt for me to do.
Well, you helped me, and by proxy helped Zach, because he holds it. Now we both have it. But without that phone call,
I'm happy.
Without that phone call, I'd still be looking at that pile of paper.
No, if I didn't ask I was really annoying. I asked her every question. I think she was super irritated with me, but it's okay.
They make that CIP extremely cumbersome. Like when I first looked at it, I was overwhelmed by it.
That's why there's very few, right? It's like one of those things like
less than 1,000 active, I think.
In Florida, look how big Florida is. How many people? There's 8 of us that are CIP in Florida.
Yeah,
that's insane.
I think there's 4 or 5 in Tennessee.
Yeah. So that's like to weed people out. It's almost like, if you have any kind of degree or whatever, people don't really care necessarily what it is, just that you have one, that you went through that length to do it. And also to keep it up. I have to renew it every 2 years. Then you have to do more CEUs.
But that's a great point, though. A little while ago, I answered a question from someone around, would I approach my job differently if I were not personally in recovery? And my answer was yes, right? Because I own, and you own, and you own the mind and the behaviors of an active drug addict.
And the experience.
And the lived experience and misery, right? So when families come to us and they go, well, my son just needs to go to some counseling, or my daughter just needs to go back to college, right? And we get to sit here and go, hey, wait, let me ask you a few more questions.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you own the mind of an addict, and you own the mind of a person in recovery, and you're experienced and nuanced enough that you have been at this for quite a while, helping people and directing traffic.
Absolutely. And it's so different. I'm sure you both can understand, from your personal version of recovery to how you have to meet your clients in today's age. You know what I mean? Like my scope of what I believe for myself and my scope of what I believe for others is much broadened over the past decade.
Right. Right. When I got sober, MAT was still kind of a shaky word.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know about that.
I judged it.
Yeah.
Big time. And I feel really bad about that today. I just was not educated the way I am now.
Same. I think there was a deeper, wider stigma to MAT than there was to substance use treatment.
Yeah.
Right. So this is probably 10, 12 years ago, was the deepest part of that stigma. It's been a bit normalized now.
That's when I lost my best friend from middle school. And if I would have met her with my version of what I know today and how I meet people today, I think I could have helped her a lot. And I don't obviously, hold the shame and guilt and things of that. It's a learning experience. And I think that she would be alive today in today's recovery, and alive and on medication is much better than dead.
Right.
If you can work and function and you can live a good life. And so my view, I feel like recovery is not black and white. I feel like there's a lot of pathways, and I've opened my mind a ton in the past few years.
Well, I think we have to too, because if we go around it being closed-minded, especially when we're talking about MAT, medically assisted treatment as a whole, like we have to be able to meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Right. Just to leverage it. Like I'll hook somebody however I can get their attention.
Totally. Absolutely.
And if they're not at where I can't try to push them to be where I'm at currently with several years when they're just getting started and expect like the same results. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely. And I'm sure you guys experience this too, but like when someone calls me and if they say, hey, I want to do this, but I'm not sure I want to stop smoking weed. Or if I want to do this, but I'm not sure I want to stop drinking. I want to look at my relationship with alcohol. There are professionals that will say, nope, I want nothing to do with it, because unless you're willing to do all of this and commit to this for a year or whatever, like the craziness is, I will say yes to those people, because if they're giving me an in, they're giving me an in and they have a desire. That's what it's about.
Fact.
There's hope.
Right.
Fact. And I've seen a lot of guys that we've worked with start in a really similar spot where it's, no, I'm not giving this up. And sometimes like, you know, that works out. And sometimes we do a little bit of digging and all of a sudden they're like, hey, like, you know what, like maybe I should consider giving this up.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. And let it be their decision, right? Because this is a anyone can tell you you're this, and this, but in this, version of mental health and recovery, like you have to own it yourself. You have to, even if you wanted a spec, you don't have to want it 100%. That's also a false truth, I think now. Like someone has to be 100% willing to be, no, just give me a drop of willingness. I can work with that.
Right. 1%, right? Even if you have to manufacture the 1%, right? By family influence, friend influence, right?
There's hope.
There's hope. Even if that 1% comes with kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Right? They've allowed the door to be opened.
Yeah.
And to me is really satisfying.
Like one of the things I loved about, both of us working with both of you. Now, Darren and I, we've known each other for years before working on the show together. And, before, I think we were both really fully doing this work. I think you were doing it before me on this like part-time, right? Like
I go back to 2013 as a full-time guy.
Okay. And then you owned a program and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like, is that we worked really well together, like I worked really well with you, even on first time working together, and that's not always the case. I worked on a lot of interventions with a lot of people, and sometimes you just don't vibe and you don't have the same mindset. And that can be impacted on, the outcome and the how you present,
Yeah. And speaking of the trip we got to take together, right? So production texts me and say, hey, we got a co-chair for you. Her name's Amanda Marino. I was like, cool. And then they start telling me all about you like I don't know. And I'm like, no, man, it's cool for real. Like I can't wait.
Yeah.
And then like as soon as we showed up, we had this bond because from my end, I was like, dude, this is the person who took time out of her day to debunk a huge myth for me. Like I'll walk across class. And then, we got to meet up and it was just easy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I
felt comfortable to share my ideas. You felt comfortable to share your ideas.
Totally.
We had big decisions to make, like almost immediately day one regarding safety and production and just the whole caboodle. We got to navigate that together.
And we did. And we were on the same page. And the thing that cracked me up about Darren, I don't know if you know this, Zach, was Darren was like, Amanda, do you, like off the camera, like, do you really feel that way? Like, if you're not, don't say, and I was like, listen, whatever I'm going to say on the camera is going to be exactly what I'm going to say, just me and you. And whatever I say is what I mean. Like, I promise you, there's no two sides. Like, this is 100% how I feel.
But if you remember, I know exactly where we're standing. We're standing next to a fence on a driveway. Right?
Yes.
And production had come with a concern.
Yes.
And like we didn't have time to rally. We just had to answer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
but I'll answer the same in front of cameras, and so will you.
Right.
And we're that way, keeping it real.
Right. And then you guys got to work together.
Yeah.
After.
We met in San Fran at the airport.
I think I texted you because I didn't know where you were in the airport. And like this was our first time meeting in person. Like we'd only texted and talked on the phone before. And I think I texted Amanda and was like, I don't know if anyone told, like, just look for red hair and a lot of tattoos and like you'll spot me. Like, don't worry, like you'll know who I am. And then literally from all the way down the terminal, I see Amanda and she's, I'm over here. You know what I mean?
And I had a whole little corner set up waiting for you.
Absolutely. Then
ready for the selfies.
I was going to say, first thing she does, whip out the iPhone and say, come here. and she starts taking all the selfies, posts them on social media, tagging me and everything.
Yeah.
Actually taught me a lot too about social media, especially like not just like with how you work and stuff like that on intervention, but the stuff like that I do a pretty bad job about thinking about, which is like, how do I work social media?
Yeah.
Right. And how do I do this? And how do I post and yada, yada, yada. And you're such a seasoned pro at it. Like you didn't even really had to teach me. You just had to be transparent with me and I could just kind of copy your playbook.
Well, I also had to DM you guys and be like, guys, reshare it. Like reshare it, please. I accept the collaboration, things like that, which you don't know if you don't know. But like I built a business, I built Next Level Recovery Associates in the pandemic. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I didn't have going to places and marketing like that. Like I had only social media, which was great because I had no money. So with no money, I was able to build a beautiful national and international presence online. And so that's why like I'm really good at it. I had no choice.
Yeah. By the end of that trip, I was taking selfies.
Well, we're still taking notes on how you navigate socials, and we've both just bonded out of Instagram jail, like within the last week.
Oh, well, what happened with that? You told me that in the text, but
they didn't like our link. They didn't like the name of the company, the firm Addiction Consulting. So once we dropped that link,
why was
they? I don't know. We could never get an explanation. But as soon as we dropped that link out of our bio, we're out of jail.
Okay, cool.
So.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's probably worth noting too. We were talking about this yesterday. Fentanyl is a buzzword that is just dominant in our industry.
Yeah.
It's dominant everywhere in America, right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
And it's really unfortunate that if you go and you were to search right now today, April 8th, 2024, you can't find posts on social media that feature the word fentanyl.
Really? Because I use that hashtag often, like fentanyl kills.
But just the word fentanyl. You can't find it because the powers that be at Meta don't like it.
Well, maybe Big Pharma doesn't like it.
Possibly.
That we're calling that shit out.
Possibly.
Yeah. Like,
sitting here in Tennessee, fentanyl's everywhere, and I'd be interested to hear what you're seeing drug trend wise in South Florida.
Yeah, I mean, it's to a point where I tell, my clients or families I speak to, oh, well, they're taking this, I'm like, you don't know, you're anything you can use now, you're putting your life at risk for fentanyl to be in it. I'm talking THC, like weed, that somehow there's a white substance in this. It's in Xanax bought on the streets, pain pills, it's in anything, and you're literally risking your life. And then I have young female clients. I had a slew of them recently in their early 20s telling me that their drug of choice is fentanyl, flat out at that age, and which kind that they like. And I was like baffled. And I was giving them like some real like heart to heart. I said, listen, if you're at that phase right now in your early 20s, there is no higher high for you. Like you're never going to get the higher high that you've already had. And the only thing that's going to help you is a spiritual path. Like that's that's going to be the high that's going to be higher than your fentanyl high, and that's just scary. Like that. I mean, we were doing crazy shit when I was younger. Like, I took all kinds of things, ecstasy, I did cocaine, I did, many different drugs. But we didn't know there was a substance in there that could kill us, but that's what they're willing to do now. Right. It's to a whole nother level. Like Florida is, cocaine's big again. Crack has made a comeback.
Crack's made a comeback because people want to do the fentanyl they want to stay awake and enjoy the fentanyl high.
Yeah. What is it called? When you do the upper and the downer together, speedballing.
Speedball, yeah.
A version of that. Yeah. I got clean in the pandemic. I mean, the pain pill epidemic down in South Florida, when it was like the pill mills. So it was in 2007. So that was before, heroin made its comeback. Like heroin was like huge taboo. So I never tried heroin. Right. It would have killed me though, because I couldn't even handle like, big girl pain pills. Like I never even tried an oxy. Right. So, I mean, I was bad enough on like Percocets, those kind of things. So, it's crazy down there. We're close to like, Miami has everything. It's definitely a hard place for people to get into recovery. And one thing I've seen a rate like going up again is also like hallucinogenics, like mushrooms and whatever they're calling ecstasy, Molly nowadays, like that's all big again. But I still see, heroin and fentanyl are the biggest problem.
Yeah. And like here, I never hear anybody talk about Molly or MDMA or ecstasy anymore. It's just not here.
It's a South Beach
It's not as prevalent.
Yeah.
And it used to be like back when I was running around, that was the big deal. I think what we've seen is in the change, like if you were to look at data for entries into detox or residential programs in the last 18 months, alcohol truly still is king and queen.
Yeah.
Right. But it doesn't get the buzz. Right.
Right.
But fentanyl is a close second, third, and fourth.
Yeah. Fentanyl. I mean, but to know, like, to say, like what did you use, Zach?
Everything. If you could put it in a needle, I use alcohol was my baby.
Okay.
Right. Whiskey was number one. Cocaine was a close second. And
together too.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a balance.
Absolutely. I've done cocaine by itself without whiskey once.
Oh, it's not good.
It's just not my thing. But if you combine the two, it was definitely my thing.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it was pain pills and anything I could put in a needle.
Okay.
That was really it. That was the jam for me back then.
And there was no fentanyl then, was there?
There was. It was. So I got sober on the tail end, or on the beginning of the fentanyl coming in. That was actually the last drug I ever did was fentanyl. But mine was like, I wasn't going out to cop fentanyl. I was going out to cop dope. And then there was no dope in my dope. You know what I mean? And I was died for 5 minutes, defib, the whole thing. Big dramatic scene. Wow. Whole different story. We've talked about that though on here. Mm-hmm. But either way, like, you're 100% right. Because what you're seeing a lot in Florida, I'm seeing a lot in Tennessee. Nothing is what it is anymore.
No.
Everything's a unicorn. We've worked with heroin addicts who are like fentanyl's their flavor, and like we'll find a bunch of Xanax bars on them, and we'll be like, what's this? And they would just be like, oh, it's because they're just straight fentanyl.
Too. Yeah,
it's like they know everyone who's getting pills off the street knows like these are fentanyl pressed bars or these are fentanyl pressed perks,
and you're willing to take that risk. That to me is terrifying.
These are dirty 30s, right?
Yeah,
like that's what they're looking after. Dirty 30s.
Dirty 30s. Okay.
Like instead of like Roxy.
Yeah.
They just go ahead and call it what it is.
Wow.
But I'm noticing another trend because fentanyl is so scary. You have this other side. You have the flip of that coin. Are families that are just going, well, all he or she's doing is smoking weed and drinking, or maybe a little bit of both. So they're not into hard drugs, right? And so while fentanyl can take casual user into inline addiction real quick,
absolutely,
these people who are I say just as kind of a quote, but just drinking or just smoking weed, they're suffering longer because they don't look as bad and they're not an immediate threat for overdose.
Absolutely,
right. So families don't need to take it as urgently. And our deal here is, I mean, every human life, you got to treat it with urgency.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And I think, I don't know if you guys have the problem here, but we have a lot of the synthetic drugs going on. Like you can go to the vape shop and buy like things that look like weed, but it's Delta 8. Mm-hmm. So like that's a whole thing, like there's CBD. Like I think CBD is great and has great, uses. And there's nothing in it that gets you high, but there's things that are sold sometimes as CBD at these places that have the Delta strands in it. And that stuff can send people to psych hospitals. And so like a 21-year-old, it used to be 18 in Florida, but now 21, they can go to the store and buy that and then like drive around. And that's terrifying because that makes you like really messed up.
Right.
And do you guys have like the kratom and the kava and all that stuff here?
We have all that here.
And just like you
drive by one of the local, just like tobacco shops that, back in our day, it was just, that's where you buy, chewing tobacco, cigarettes and cigars. And they all have signs for kratom, CBD, Delta 8.
Yeah.
They're advertising it, not hiding it.
Those things actually scare me. Like if someone was like smoking traditional, like medicinal marijuana or something like that would scare me a lot less than the Delta stuff. Like it's synthetic, you know what I mean? It's not real. It scares me.
The Delta stuff scares me. Like you can say like not homegrown, but with mass produced weed, what you're getting, right? With the Deltas, you have no idea what you're getting.
And it's different and there's no regulation. It's a little scarier.
Mm-hmm. It's completely unregulated. And what we're seeing is our younger people, like high school kids, getting into the Deltas and then going into a full psychosis.
Yeah. You can.
Right?
For sure.
Like
I had a girlfriend that doesn't do any drugs at all, but she is a bodybuilder and she takes CBD. She thought she took 2 CBD and it was 2 Deltas and she ended up in the emergency room. Like she freaked out.
Yeah.
Like it was like made her out of her mind. And so like so it's really scary. So people can think they're going and getting something, oh yeah. And they don't know what they're talking about in those places. Like they're not educated on anything.
No,
So
they have no
it's
clue.
scary. So some of these things like, being a mother, my son's 18 years old. He's graduating high school this year. I told my son when he started high school, listen, you can try something at a party and it could ruin your life. Your friend could try something and they could be fine. And then also educating on like what's out there. You know what I mean? My son has actually never tried anything, not a cigarette. I mean, that's 18 years, not a cigarette, not a sip of alcohol, nothing. Which is baffling to me because by the time I was his age, I had already been in and out of so many psych wards, juvenile detention center, rehabs, like all that. So, but I think education on like what's out there to our children and to people, like putting out quality content, talking about this stuff like we're doing.
Right.
Because people don't know.
Well, if you had a bullet list you could hand to parents of 16, 17-year-olds, where would you start?
I would say have open and honest conversations with your children, especially if you've gone through something yourself. I think my greatest asset as a mother has been being open and vulnerable of like what I've had to suffer through so they don't have to continue that generational trauma. Right. Educating your kids, not shaming them, telling them to come to you and keeping that safe, like hearing them. I think allowing the space and hearing them, like my kids are allowed to be mad at me, but they can't disrespect me. They're allowed to share their feelings of being upset with me. So I keep that openness with my kids. Mm-hmm. Trying to tell them don't ever do anything, like the old school, like I was the president of the DARE program,
Yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And then became full blown addict.
I still remember the DARE song.
Oh yeah. I had a jacket. I was hanging with the cops in their office. Like in 7th grade, I was like the DARE queen. But I think like the don't use anything or don't try anything. I think like I just said to my son, like, I just want you to know this is in your genetics going both ways, for many generations. So I think having those open conversations with your kids and just keeping it real, and if you've had your own experiences, sharing it with them, don't be afraid,
right. Yeah. In the sense that in most people would say, I would do anything for my children. Cool. If you're sitting in chairs like ours, on the recovery side of things, I would do anything for my kid, right? Including suffering from a drug addiction, right? So I'm glad in a lot of senses, I'm very glad that I got to suffer and struggle early on. And I'm very glad that the messaging I got at home was so far off that I got to do a 180 as a parent.
Yeah,
right?
Me too.
I can really appreciate what was done and not done on my behalf because now I have a map.
Yeah.
Right.
And honoring that too, like honoring that, like my mother did the best she had with what she had. Right. My mom comes from trauma and comes from so many things, we'll get into that, but like my journey and like what brought me into this whole thing, but like honoring that, like they did the best they could, but like, I know what I can do to change this generational trauma. That's like, I have that power in my hands. And like my son was 18 months old when I changed my life and he's 18 and he would not be the kid he is today if I didn't do that. And my daughter, she's 11. She's never seen any of it, but if I didn't have my son at 24 years old, I wouldn't be alive or who I am. He saved my life.
So tell us, I'm really interested. How did you get to the point where from day 0 to day 1, I'm an active drug addict and I got to change? How did that happen for you?
Well, okay. So, we were talking about this a little bit before. So I'm very comfortable talking about it. It makes other people uncomfortable. So don't be uncomfortable. But I was, molested from ages 4 to 7, and was around, my abuser was this like super religious, loved guy by day in the community, was a drug dealer, woman beater, sexual abuser by night. And, my mom got, very domestically abused for many years. And she took that because her life was threatened and things like that. But when she found out I was getting molested was when she was out of there. So we did like this whole like running to a cab. He was beating my mom up. We ran to a cab, got out of there. She got a restraining order, this whole thing. And then he hired someone to kidnap my sister a month later. And he kidnapped her and took her to Canada for a month. The beautiful sister you see of mine today. Mm-hmm. And so she was gone for a month in Canada. So like I was like severely traumatized. Like I wouldn't go outside alone, without my mom for like a year.
How old were you when your sister was abducted? 7.
They tried to take me and it was in front of me. So they knocked me over on my bicycle. It was lawn maintenance day. So if there's ever lawn equipment around and you see me be uncomfortable, like he was dressed up as a lawn to blend in with the rest of the lawn maintenance guy, the guy he hired. So I started young age, like stealing things. And if I stole my mom would have bought it for me, but if I stole it, I either got a rush, a high from getting away with it, or I got when I got caught, I got the attention. So it was a win-win for me.
Either way, you're winning, right? Dopamine.
Yeah. And then, my mom says I first chugged a beer at 4, a Heineken. First cigarette, I think in elementary school, weed was first. I'm sorry. I smoked weed in 4th grade, which is insane. At a birthday party, at a sleepover. Like if that shit's going down, my daughter's sleepover, like somebody's getting their ass kicked. And then it was cigarettes in middle school. And then like by the time I got to high school, I sought out the bad boys. I found every senior or older drug dealer and bad boy. And like, I sought them out and like, I felt like really at home with them. Like I felt like, I got out of myself. I was fully using hard drugs by 14, 15 in my first program at 14, psych hospitals, rehabs, juvenile. I spent 30 days in juvenile detention center.
I knew you were a gangster.
When I was 17, juvie's worse than jail because you can't do anything. So, I mean, I went through so much and I kept hurting myself because I was hurt, right? I suffered a lot and it's like legit, like I honor that. But like my whole thing was chalk it up to, well, people that are sexually abused or raped or that have gone through what I've gone through, we're meant to be fucked up. Like I'm lucky I'm not a prostitute on the corner. That was literally like my mindset. And anytime that I would go be put in somewhere or whatever, or locked, whatever I went through, I never really wanted to clean up for myself. Like I was like, no, I'm a party girl. Like that's what I am. I'm a party girl, and I wasn't a party girl. I mean, I had a lot of fun. Like you see, I've hung out with like Dr. Dre and Channing Tatum, and I've done like a lot of really cool things in my life and was in the entertainment business. But I just was chalking it all up to like, I'm fucked up and I'm cool with it.
Right.
That was it. My destiny. Mm-hmm. So I woke up one day in rehab. I was there for 30 days already. And I was the worst client. I was the one that was punching a guy, mooned poor sweet old staff member named Paris and told him to kiss my ass. The sweetest.
And you mooned Paris?
I mooned Paris and told him to kiss my ass. And years later, like, he's like, he was always a great support to me after, and we still laughed about that. But I escaped from rehab. I smuggled energy drinks in. I did everything but sleep with someone there. But that's the only rule I didn't break because I was already skeeved out from, what I had done before going to rehab. But this time it was like my choice to go there, but I still was an asshole for the first 30 days. And I had a spiritual awakening there of like, oh my God, what am I doing? I have a kid. I want to be a mom. I don't want to live like this. Like maybe I'm going to try to listen to one thing that they tell me to do. And I started to take some suggestions. And like, I wanted to, the first 4 years of my recovery, I was really focused on like my healing and my trauma. Mm-hmm. And I had no interest in doing work in this field. Like all my friends were techs and behavioral health techs and doing stuff. I had no interest. I was like, no, I got a messy thing going on over here.
Got enough traffic going.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you guys did you ever work in treatment like that?
I did. And it only lasted. So like I worked, so the first maybe like 2.5 years of my sobriety, once I got 6 months, I got this like, just kind of like rinky dink part-time position. And then it kind of weaseled my way on up, but I got so bored with doing that kind of line of work, man. Cause it's same thing all day, every day at the exact same time, which I get for, the patient standpoint, having that structure and everything. Yeah,
it's one of the most important roles, but I just had never had a desire to do it.
I had a desire to do it, and then I quickly lost that desire and fell in love with what the three of us get to do now.
Yeah, I had a slower road to this. Like I started, I had friends that were doing marketing for programs, and I was working at the Breakers, and that conference came there every year, and I'd be like, oh my God, I want to do what they're doing. I want to do it. And so I started like, building like, experience that I could get a job doing that. So then I worked in outreach and, doing all that stuff for years. And then that became ew to me because I was only as good as how many people I put in treatment last month. And that just was icky to me. I didn't feel good. And I came and tapped into case management work and started doing some second shares and like learning interventions. And I absolutely fell in love. And I was like, this is my calling. I want to help women. My favorite thing is mothers, young traumatized women, to not just survive what they've been through and exist, to actually thrive and overcome. And that's with men too, you know what I mean? But like my softest spot is moms, because, you know, my son was 18 months old when I got clean. But like, I do this because I feel like I have a calling and a desire and a passion that is a fire inside of me, that I don't want people to die. I don't want people to just exist. I want people to live their best lives.
Do you remember, going back to like any of your first, second chair interventions, do you remember an exact moment where you're like, hey, this right here, this is what I'm going to do?
Even like, so I started by doing like the screenings, you know, like doing a phone, because I worked for a clinical interventionist, and she would have me do the phone screenings with the families. So I even loved that. Like, just like, you know, hearing the different stories and the dynamics, like, and then meeting with clients, like doing some recovery coaching. I think when I got, you know, certified in recovery coaching. And then before I even took like my 20-hour intervention training, I was already like building my CIP profile. So by the time I went and did that, like I had already had like all my second chairs and like all that stuff. Mm-hmm. There was so many, everything about it was an aha moment for me. I was just like, this is what I meant to do. Like, there was a time when I was like kind of on the fence of like, okay, where am I going to go for my next step? And it's just like, I planned my last job in treatment. The last like 2 years I was there, I was also doing this. So I was doing, you know, transports and second chairs and all these things on the side. Before I ever did an intervention alone, I had been doing them with people for 2 years. Right. I was terrified to put that responsibility on me. Which is the only responsible way to do it. Yeah. Right. Let's be really clear. Yeah, I was scared. That's a once in a life. Like, you have one chance sometimes, and someone's family's life is on the line. Right. Like, so I was brought in the same way. I sat second chair. I started doing transports, and I got to study under a really well-known, at that point, really well-known interventionist. Mm-hmm. And I took the scraps. You know, I didn't know if I was getting paid. I didn't know if I was going to make it home in 2 days. He didn't bother to tell me. He just said, he would just say, hey, we got a trip. We're going to XYZ. And that's the best, you know? And that was my learning path. That was definitely Zach's learning path. But getting to sit second chair before a life was put in your lap, and, you know, here you go, good luck. Yeah. Right? Like, looking back, I only gained intuition with practice, right? Like, very lucky that I didn't hurt anybody. Yeah. You know? Yeah, no, totally. Very fortunate, because, I mean, we get, like you said, we get one shot. Yeah. Like, you know, I've been mentored by so many people in so many different styles. You've been mentored, you know, and like, I'm sure your experience, like what's your experience with that? My experience was, so it was a lot like yours. I think it was probably about a year, maybe, what would you say? I think it was about a year before I did my first solo intervention up in Kentucky. And that one, oh man, I remember driving up there early in the morning, because I had about a 3-hour drive to get up there, and you would think somebody just greased my steering wheel. My palms were so sweaty the whole way, because I was excited, but I was also nervous. It's also the reality of exactly what we're all saying. Like, dog, you got one shot, and everyone's counting on you for this. And luckily that one was, you know, that one was a home run. It was a touchdown. But I did a lot of second chairs, transports, sober companions. I didn't care what the job was. If I got asked, like, my answer was, yeah, when, where, and I would just do it. Working for like a lot of different people too, I learned a lot of different things, experience of like what I liked, what I didn't like, what I thought was kind of outdated, that I thought would like, and I was a sober companion. So like now that I manage sober companions, I feel like because I've done that work, I can like effectively manage them. A lot of owners of sober companion companies have never done it. Right. So, you know, this is one thing that Darren did that I found complete, like, just, you couldn't put a price tag on it, and he's not going to mention it. I'm sure, because he's not going to don't remember it. He's not going to tell us how good he is at mentoring people to do this kind of thing. But every time I sat second chair, I was always second chair with Darren. And afterwards, once the intervention was done, patients in treatment, the first thing he always did with me is we would do like a debrief. Yeah. We would pretty much X's and O's on a whiteboard, and, okay, when this happened, could we have done anything better? And would break everything down almost like game tape. That's the best training in the world, right?
And then like it taught me how to have like that same kind of intuition, and it expedited that process for me because I had a seasoned pro doing the breakdown.
Yeah. And then now that's your process, right? And we can all look at cases and say, maybe I could have done this better or different, and utilize that as a learning opportunity for next time, right? But yeah, this work, it's definitely my calling. Like recently, my former business partner left, and he started to hate this work, and it started to keep him up at night, and he started to not like it, and so as he was going that way, I was going, no. I respect where he is, but that's not where I am. Like, I fall more and more in love with this. As crazy as it is, as many off the wall situations I've been put in, dangerous situations, I know that this is my path and my passion and my purpose. Like, I feel blessed to do this work.
So passion, purpose, and I would be lying if I didn't say that on the day that a good friend of mine told me, I said, man, I want to be an intervention. I want to be an interventionist. And I whispered it. He said, well, then you should burn the fucking boats and become an interventionist.
Oh yeah.
And he hooked me up with my first mentor. Right? Well, from that day saying that out loud, I also whispered, I want to be on the show Intervention.
Oh my God, me too. I said it 14 years ago.
Right. And like, I can go back to like a drunken one of those cocaine fueled phone calls you have with like your friend you talk to once a year.
Yeah.
But I remember exactly where I was sitting in the parking lot. I was sitting at the Lexington Apartments in Bellevue.
I know exactly where it is.
I'm on my like 8th. I'm trying to drink. I'm out of cocaine, so I'm trying to drink the buzz.
So you wanted to be on the show when you were still using?
I told him I was like, man, I'm going to get sober and I'm going to change and I'm going to help people.
Aww.
And I mean, I probably said it a million times. So I'm only right once out of a million, right? But it was a goal of mine.
You manifested it.
Yeah.
I believe in, like, that's my version of things. I manifest.
I totally believe.
You put it out there and it happened.
I put it out there.
We all did that, actually. I know you did too.
Yeah, my first treatment center ever.
You said, I'm going to be
years old.
You said,
I said, I'm not going to be sober, but in the off chance that I do and I don't die first, that would be cool to do.
Right.
Yeah, because and I come from, like I told you guys, I was in a lot of like hip hop music videos, a lot of commercials, was in the entertainment scene for 18 years. And when I first came into recovery, I was like 220 pounds. And I like would say things that were like outlandish, but like I believed that maybe it was possible. Like, I'm going to run a half marathon. I did it. My sister cracked up laughing at me, like when I said that as this big girl that I was. Mm-hmm. And I was like not healthy. I had high cholesterol, like all these things. And then I also said, I want to be a woman of substance in front of the camera, not like shaking my ass or like, objectified for my body. Like, I want to do something. I want to be on the TV show Intervention and be like a woman of substance. And I manifested that like for like a few years into my recovery. Like, I put it out there, and thankful to Ken and to Ken Seeley and Michael Gonzalez, because they both first connected me and introduced me, like before doing digital addiction and stuff like that. They introduced me into get me to audition and stuff.
Yeah. I'll never forget my casting Zoom that I had where I got to fly swat a wasp and like just kept answering. And
that's probably why you got chosen.
If that's it. I'm cool.
They're like, he's
right?
a badass. He just keeps going.
Like he didn't skip a beat. And then the call came, hey, do you have a second seat that you'd want to work with on this case? And I was like, yeah, work with him every day. And so there it was. And then, everything that's happened since then, like, here we go. Yeah. You guys got to work together.
Yeah.
It just feels like this is the start of a really cool chapter.
Pandemonium,
right?
I sound like Travis Kelce right now. He always says that on there. Look.
But like, for real, pandemonium of joy.
Yes.
Right? Like
a series of events that have just manifested into amazing shit.
Yeah. And it's so cool that like, we truly don't know when next will be.
We really don't.
We have no idea.
That's been a roller coaster in itself, man.
It's called being an acceptance.
Shit.
Like,
yeah, managing expectations, right?
Yeah, I have none. I have zero now.
Right.
Like the fact that I'm here with you guys, like all my needs and wants for that realm are met.
Right.
For now.
Right.
For now.
For now.
Yeah.
So we do know that our episodes will air. We just don't know when they'll air. But I just can't wait to like continue to collaborate with you
Yeah, you guys are my brothers now.
Yeah.
You are. You're fully my brothers, and like we're you know, we do certain things. Like I love that you two, like if I get a call for a situation of that I'm like not comfortable or too scared to do, you guys are gonna be my go-to. You know what I mean?
Is that because you think we're reckless?
I don't not.
No, you said the word.
I said this isn't the right word, but I think that you two are, you know, conditioned and it's so needed, willing to go into much more dangerous situations than I am. I will not, like, I will make sure like certain things happen before I go into them. You two will just go right in the, and you love that. And that's great.
I do.
And that's needed.
I really
It's so needed. Like I just, you know, one of our mutual friends, Mark, who calls me like very bougie and whatever he calls me, all the things, even though he's much more bougie than me, we know.
10 out of 10.
What?
10 out of 10. He's more bougie.
Who stayed in where and who stayed elsewhere?
I believe it was Mark.
Yeah. I stayed in the not so nice place.
He didn't.
But no, like I've shared with you guys too. Like I've had, you know, guns cocked on me upstairs coming to a Johnson model intervention. That's why I try to do more invitational now. I've had a 14-year-old rip his shirt off and chest pump me and call me a fucking whore in my face, like really trying to get so I've had so many situations where family thought that they were using drugs. Guess what? They weren't using drugs. It was just psychosis. Like that's some scary stuff too. So like I really I've tailored like my assessments and my things to make sure that like I'm stepping into least dangerous situations as possible.
And to be clear, we do ask some very pointed questions.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
Before we go running uphill.
But you guys are needed. That's needed what you do. You know what I mean? There is a need for that.
Right.
I'm just not willing to do all of it.
Well, we're always happy. We're always happy to fill in.
Well, you got my back. You got my back in that area.
Yeah.
It's for me. It's just one of those things. I love intervention. I absolutely love intervention, but I love the crisis management. The on the fly, got to move right now. Don't have time to sit down and have 3 days to plan intervention.
Totally. And that's important.
It's just how my brain works, and that's my jam. I love that shit.
That's great. That's like your specialty, which is amazing. Like we all have our things. Like I like to have time to plan out with the family, but like if I have a client that I'm working with and they're in a hospital from an overdose and they AMA, I don't have that time anymore. Now I need to get them now.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like so there's situations where like my psychologist meeting with the family before and after, and the psychiatric nurse doing the assessments, and like all these things I have like that are this beautiful, perfect world. Obviously you can't, that is not every case. If someone needs to be seen now, today, or they're going to die, I make that happen too.
Fact.
You know?
Yeah. I spent my day yesterday doing a balancing act between being a parent of a 6-year-old and helping direct traffic for an 18-year-old male who's insulin dependent, uncontrolled frontal lobe seizures, and just broke loose with a bottle full of Klonopin from his grandma into the woods. So, moms, what the hell do I do? Right?
That's a tough one. What do you do?
You get mobile crisis immediately.
Okay. You guys do have good mobile crisis here?
Mobile crisis in Tennessee is actually can be very, very good.
Okay, because I tried to use it recently for a alcoholic female client I had in Miami, and it was awful. She had to be like fully willing to talk to them, or they weren't willing. It was just like I was kind of disappointed in it. Yeah. What my hardest kind of client, at least for me in the past like few years, has been the older female alcoholics. Like I'm talking 55 to 75. They're stubborn and hard interventions. I don't know if you have experience like that, or like what's your hardest client, but my hardest has I think one, I trigger them. I remind them of their daughters if they have a daughter. So I usually bring either an older female, an older male. Like because I always do partner. I don't ever do them alone unless it's like a certain situation, like going to see someone in the hospital or very mild. But yeah, my toughest clients are the older hardcore alcoholics that have like drank their whole life and are females.
Yeah. I had a really tough one recently with an older male alcoholic around that would have been my dad's age. And I think it's for me, it felt difficult because I think he was looking at me like a peer of his children, you know, when in reality, you know, that dynamic is not real, you know, and that was a tough one. But he's, went to treatment. success rates across the board for intervention, I could say this out loud and to anyone that we would ever come across. If an interventionist tells you his or her success rate is 100%, they've either not worked for very long or they're full of shit.
Right.
They're
pretty high though. I mean, when people ask me, I can be honest, like when they're like, what's, because some families feel like that's like the answer. And I'm like, every situation's unique and every situation's different. I can't give you a guarantee, but I can tell you if you hold your boundaries and we do this right, there is a high chance that they will go to treatment, whether they will stay long-term, like that. There's also continuation of the boundaries and also like us being involved with the care and long-term support. Right.
Right.
But the success rates are really high.
Mm-hmm. For people who know what they're doing, they're well above 90%, I would say. They certainly are for us.
Yeah. And if they don't go that day, like I don't see that as a lose, I see like if I get them to go within a week or go at all, but sometimes it's not that day. Like I always to pull every card out of I'll stay there for days if I have to get them to go that day, that day of not leave. But, sometimes it takes, a couple days and they go, but the best chance is that day.
Yeah. I like same day, door to door. That's always the aim, right?
Absolutely. But there's certain situations where if it's going to get
some arrangements that can't be made until after an agreement's made, and we have to work around that.
Yeah. And that's where like a companion or something can be helpful or, coming back. And, I've had to re-intervene a couple days later. I had one gentleman in the Carolinas who we had to spend the night there because we missed so many flights. We had to spend the night at his mom's like mansion. And we had our own like area, and basically we had to re-intervene on him so many times because he was so drunk that he was yes, then back to no, I'm not going. 6 a.m. he's trying to take off in his car, and we ended up having to drive him from the Carolinas down to Augustine. He went to Augustine Recovery.
Okay.
So I'm willing to go to extremes to meet people where they are. I've been through some, like I'm sure we've all been through really crazy situations. Like we could write books. But the success rates I had somebody who came willingly. We went to, this is an intervention I did not long ago. We all went to lunch before, him and his friends. Like it was like a beautiful like reunion of love. And he was like so happy. Easiest, best intervention day, right? Mm-hmm. Flying back to treatment, all this stuff. And then he gets into treatment and he turns and he flips the switch and he's like a complete pain in the butt. Like, trying to leave, trying to, pinpoint family, like doing all this stuff, and took our release away, cut us off. And we were kind of like, wow, that was really odd. Like to have such a beautiful family meeting, a beautiful intervention, have this guy go rogue, like we're the enemy. Then he came back Thanksgiving and sent us an email that thanked us, and he apologized. It took him a little longer to really see the beauty of what happened, what his family and his friends did for him. And he couldn't have done it without us. So you never know, like you could even leave on bad terms with them and then come back down the road and be like, hey, thank you. And I was like, wow, like that made me so happy. Like I told him, I said, you made my year. Things like that will make my year. Hearing from someone that has struggled or has been in the problem client or the one that was scary, make it like that to me that's like the highest high there is.
I think hugs from moms of adult sons are like my highest high. But always hearing just because that was my dynamic with my own mom.
Of course, right? It's our personal experience usually that
just gives me that extra sunshine. Yeah. But I ran into a former client, spouse of a former intervention intended patient the other day, and he was really extremely warm, and I asked about his significant other, and he was telling me just how all these amazing things that she's doing in her life and getting into her own recovery, and he said I knew she was doing really well when she stopped saying she hated you. She's fully let go of the resentment that she had to go to treatment,
That's amazing.
And to me, that's like, you're doing the right thing.
That's the healing there.
That's the healing part. So she's like, to know that we get to go full circle, somehow, because we're the bearer of bad news a lot of times.
Yeah. I try to buffer that by connecting with them. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I try to buffer that and be like, listen, I get it. Like no one is I'm a very loving, I come with a very loving, you guys have seen me, unless I need to get funky
on
somebody when they're awful. I will. which Darren and I experienced. He saw the other side of me, but yeah, I try to come from kindness and love, you know.
I saw you wrangle a lot of energy in one room. It was about to become a riot.
Yeah. Well, I was a little bit of a part of it.
Well, yeah, but you wrangled it and got it put away.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that needed to happen for that family.
Yeah.
It did. Sometimes it needs to happen. Sometimes it has to get a little, you know, I try to keep things de-escalated, but sometimes some stuff needs to come out. You know what I mean? Like when I worked on the digital addiction show, the poor the first woman I worked with, she just needed to hear from her mom that like her mom honored the fact that she was molested by her husband. She just wanted her mom to be like, her mom's like, I don't remember that. I don't remember. I go, no, that's not helping your daughter right now in this moment. Choose treatment and go get help, because she just wants you to just say, I'm sorry that happened. And I'm sorry that happened to you. Like just give her that, you know what I mean? So sometimes things need to come out, and it's a little controversial, and sometimes it can be, kept at a chill.
Yeah. That's the nuance that we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
The nuance of knowing when to push and when to pull back.
Yeah. And sometimes it's good to have the two. You know what I mean? Like one bad cop, one good cop.
Always the bad guy.
And there's always somebody that like, I'm sure like certain clients connect to you and hate him, or vice versa. Yeah. All of them. Okay. I'm usually the bad news guy. And then here's Sunshine Jones. That's so funny. That was usually Blake was usually the good guy.
We say the same thing. I think the only difference is in the real young guys, because I'm younger.
Yeah.
And I come in strong hit them with the, hey man, how you doing? You know what I mean? And just see, exactly. That's what they do.
But I mean, I come in bearing gifts, right? I want to know what's his favorite flavor Gatorade. Tell me about him.
You're big on bringing energy drinks.
I want to bear gifts. I want the energy I want to walk in the room with is like, hey, I want you guys to act like you just won the Super Bowl. Like we're already happy. Yeah. We're already hopeful.
Yeah, this is amazing.
This is going to turn out to be the best day in this family's history.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
We already know the end. So stick with me. Like let's bring good energy, good body language. Let's have smiles on our face, even if we're nervous as shit.
Yeah.
I
do weird things like sit on the floor, and play with the dog. Like I'll sit on the floor. So I try to be off, but I also dress the part too. Like if I know I'm doing a young person, I'll wear my Adidas or whatever, comfy. If I know I'm going to meet with an executive, I'm dressed to the nine. I think I keep those things into mindset. I try to get as much, know them as much as I can before walking in. So I hopefully can connect with them, or they can tell me to F off. Like I have been told many times, get the F out of my house. I'm calling the police. Sorry, your family invited me in. Sorry, I can't do that. I was like, one time I was like, actually call them. Call them. Let's get them here. Let's tell them why I'm here. They fell down your stairs? Okay. Call them on their bluff. Right. And I think if we were to be able to, I would feel lucky if we get to continue to collaborate with you. Of course you will. Over the years, because this is a long-term relationship here, guys. Right. We're locked in. We're ride or die. We're locked in. I would say we're the dunk crew, but you guys are cowboy booting it today. I'm dunking it. I'll be dunks tomorrow. What I'm the most excited for the show to come out, because I feel like this season is different than other seasons. In many ways, I feel like we're the next gen. I love that. I give much love to the OGs like Ken and Michael and people that have been on the show forever. But I think that we're going to bring something fresh to the table, and that excites me the most. And that we're going to be able to help a different demographic of people. I think so. What about for you? What are your most excited things about it? I was hopeful. I was hopeful that my bags got lost on the way to Detroit, because Ken had just had a call with us. He was wearing a Hawaiian shirt, and I was like, man, if my stuff gets lost, I'm just going to buy a Hawaiian shirt and dress up like Ken. Yes, I love that. Towards the end of my using career, I thought my mom was going to be at my front door with Ken Seeley. And because he's been so kind and generous with us, it sounds like with you as well. I think always keep in mind, he opened the door. He was the face of the whole thing. He is. I thought it was his show. Right. Yeah. I thought it was Ken Seeley's intervention. I didn't know it was A&E's. Right. I really did for years. He's the most seen guy there. Yeah. So it's cool to be as you say, next gen. I can't wait to see what we get to do next. It's going to be epic. What's your most excited thing?
Man, to just be us on TV
Yes.
and be loud about the shit we actually care about.
Yeah.
Which is this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that is the dynamic in my mind.
Yeah.
Is like, we don't have to do anything different and we just get to be us.
100.
And the show's so cool about letting us approach the interventions in our own way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like nobody's playing like dictator over here, and they're really good about being like,
Hey, what's best practice?
what do you guys think? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just letting us kind of run with it. And that gives us even more free reign to just be our true selves. And that's the part that gasses me up, because I think with any of the three of, I know with any of us three, as long as we get to be our true selves with it, how much we care and get invested in it is gonna come across.
Oh yeah. And that was one thing that was like a deal breaker with me. Like when I first was talking to A&E, like I have to be able to be myself and be exactly how I would be with any client, whether I'm on camera. And if I'm not, like I appreciate being asked, like, are you comfortable with this? Like hey, Amanda, Zach, Darren, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what the answer is, and referring to us and like bringing us in, because that's, I think, a myth. Like people think the show is like staged or whatever. It is not.
No, it's not.
It's not, and they take best practice principle from the people in our chair.
Yeah, they definitely refer to the professionals when they don't know, and they took a lot of lessons and were willing to be humble and learn. And their compassion of I remember the cameraman. Remember our last one? He was bawling. Like I mean, they're emotionally invested and they care, and they spend much more time with the clients and the families than we do before we get there. So I have much appreciation for them.
I was blown away by the amount of prep and the quality of prep for each set that I got to go on to.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Psych evals, like all coming in. I'm like, oh, I don't have to do any of this work. This is cool.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah, it's great, right?
Yeah. It was a beautiful experience, and I so love you guys. And yeah, this is just the beginning for us.
I think that's the way that I think of it too. Like, this is not the destination. Us being on the show is not really a destination. It's the first step of only knows
a new era.
What's next?
A new era.
A new era.
That's my whole year thing. A new era.
Yeah, a new era.